I had always sensed that there was something about my mother that didn't quite add up. Her silences were louder than her words, and her eyes, those trembling eyes that never seemed to rest, always carried a weight I could not define. When I was younger, I thought it was simply sadness, maybe a pain from her past she didn't want to share. But as I grew older, those silences turned into walls, and behind those walls, I knew there was a truth, dark, heavy, and waiting to be revealed. For years, I avoided asking, maybe because I feared what I might hear, maybe because I wanted to protect myself from a truth that could change everything I believed about her, about us, about my entire childhood. But life has a way of cornering us when we least expect it, and that day finally came. It was a rainy afternoon, the kind of rain that makes the whole house echo with a dull, rhythmic pounding, like a heart beating too fast. I walked into the living room where my mother sat, holding her rosary, whispering words I couldn't hear. Her hands were shaking, though she tried to hide it, sliding her fingers over the beads as if they could protect her from me. From what I was about to say, Mom, I began, my voice already trembling. I need to know the truth. She looked up, startled, like a deer caught in headlights. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. I had never seen her so vulnerable, so naked in fear. The woman who had always seemed unbreakable suddenly looked like a cornered child. All these years, I continued, my chest tightening, you've kept something from me. I know it. Every time I ask about the past, you change the subject. Every time I bring up my father, you go silent. Enough, Mom. I need answers. Her eyes filled with tears instantly, as if my words had pierced something deep inside. She gripped the rosary so tightly that her knuckles turned white, and for a moment, I thought she was going to finally confess, finally open the vault of secrets she had locked away for so long. But instead, she shook her head violently. No, she whispered, her voice barely audible. No, I can't. I can't tell you. My heart dropped. Anger boiled inside me, but beneath that anger, there was desperation. I had carried this weight my whole life, and I was done living in the shadows of half-truths. Mom, you don't understand, I said, leaning closer. I can't keep living like this. I can't keep pretending. Please, if you ever loved me, if you ever cared about me, tell me the truth. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing silently. The sight was unbearable. This wasn't just a mother refusing her child an answer. This was a woman tormented by a past she couldn't escape. And the more I pushed, the more her fear grew. It was as if the truth itself was alive, lurking in the corners of the room, threatening to devour us both if she dared to release it. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she lowered her hands. Her face was pale, her eyes red and swollen. She looked at me with a mixture of love, sorrow, and something else, something darker. They, she whispered, her voice cracking, they are watching you. The words hit me like a slap in the face. They, who were they? I froze, my mind racing with possibilities. Neighbors, family, strangers, shadows I couldn't see. Every possibility was worse than the last. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. Who's watching me? Mom, what are you talking about? She didn't answer. She just looked away, as if speaking further would invite them into the room, as if the walls had ears. Her silence screamed louder than anything she could have said. In that moment, a cold shiver ran down my spine. I realized that my life, everything I thought I knew about my family, was about to unravel. And I also realized something even scarier. Whatever my mother was hiding, it wasn't just about her past. It was about my present, my future. That day, I walked out of the room shaking, torn between anger and fear, between love and betrayal. I had confronted her, but instead of answers, I had been given a warning that would haunt me every time I looked over my shoulder, every time I noticed a shadow where none should be, every time I heard a whisper in the dark. My mother's hidden past wasn't just a secret, it was a curse, one that had finally reached me, and that was only the beginning. I couldn't sleep after my mother whispered those words. They are watching you. Her voice still echoed in my ears like a bell that refused to stop ringing. All night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to every sound in the house, the creak of the old pipes, the ticking of the clock, even the wind brushing against the windows. All of it felt different, heavier, as if every noise carried a warning I could not see. When morning came, the sun spilled through the curtains, but it did not bring peace. My mother was already in the kitchen. Her hands trembled as she gripped the rosary, her lips moving quickly in silent prayer. When she finally noticed me, she tried to smile, but her eyes betrayed her. They were wide, restless, scanning the room as if invisible eyes were staring back at her. "Mom," I asked gently, "what did you mean last night?" She froze. Her knuckles whitened around the rosary. For a long moment, she did not answer. Then, in a voice so low it barely reached me, she whispered, "Not here, not in this house." Her fear was contagious. I felt it seep into me, and suddenly, I, too, began glancing toward the windows, toward the walls, wondering if someone or something was listening. The rest of the morning was a blur of strange behavior. She checked the locks on every door 3 times, then 4. She pulled the curtains tighter, as if sunlight itself could betray us. She moved through the house like a shadow, whispering rules to me in fragments. No names near the glass. Phones, off when not in use. Cash only, never cards. Don't linger at doorways. New routes, every time. Her panic turned ordinary life into a list of survival strategies. She scribbled them onto a small notepad. Her handwriting, sharp and frantic, replaced the locks. Stronger curtain rods, cover the cameras. Buy more bleach. I tried to laugh, to lighten the air. Bleach, what for? She looked at me, with eyes I will never forget, eyes filled with a fear so deep it silenced me. "For the basement," she said simply. We went shopping that afternoon. She insisted on taking a side street I barely knew existed. She walked ahead of me, shoulders tight, chin tucked, scanning the world as if every corner was an ambush. In the store, she avoided the cameras, avoided eye contact with the cashier, paid only in cash, and left the receipt behind. It wasn't just paranoia, it was training for a war I didn't know existed. When we came home, she started installing the new locks with a precision that startled me. Her hands no longer shook. She drilled, hammered, and tightened the bolts as though she had done it 1,000 times before. That was the first time I realized my mother had lived like this before. This was not new to her. Later, she drew a map of the neighborhood. She circled 2 corners and whispered, "Blind spots. If you need to talk, talk there." Her rules were not suggestions. They were survival. That night, she refused to sleep in her bedroom. Too close to the street, she explained. Instead, she spread a blanket on the couch and placed her purse under her head like a pillow. I sat with her for hours in silence, watching the shadows crawl across the walls, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the occasional bark of a neighbor's dog. At 2 in the morning, my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Before I could reach for it, her hand landed on mine. "No," she whispered, "not at night, never at night." Her voice shook, but her eyes were steel. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. She wasn't just afraid, she was preparing me. The next day, she opened the closet and pulled down an old canvas bag. Inside, neatly packed, were envelopes bound with rubber bands, a black notebook, and a photograph wrapped in wax paper. She held the photograph without showing me the image. "This," she whispered, "is a warning label. For me, for you." Her hands trembled as she put it back. I wanted to ask, to demand answers, but her face told me everything. If she spoke, the danger would grow. I stared at her, my chest heavy with questions, but she only gave me one truth. She said, "Sometimes, silence is safer than the truth. Sometimes silence saves the one you love." Her panic was no longer just panic, it was armor. Armor forged from fear, sacrifice, and secrets too heavy to carry in daylight. That evening, as the sun disappeared, I stood in the hallway watching her tape the small camera on the laptop, cover the peephole on the front door, and unplug the router. She was turning our home into a fortress. And though part of me wanted to scream, part of me felt relief. Because maybe she was right. Maybe they were watching. And if they were, then the only thing more dangerous than my mother's panic was the truth she refused to tell. I thought that after everything, the locks, the curtains, the maps, the late-night whispers, my mother would finally speak, that she would sit me down, look me in the eyes, and say the words I had been waiting to hear my entire life. But she didn't. Instead, she built walls out of silence. Walls so high, I could almost hear the echo when my questions bounced off them and came back to me unanswered. The day after she showed me that canvas bag, I found her in the kitchen, staring at the photograph wrapped in wax paper, holding it like it might burn her fingers if she touched it too long. I sat down across from her and said, as gently as I could, "Mom, please, tell me who they are. Tell me why they are watching me." Her eyes flicked toward the window, then back to me. She shook her head, slowly, deliberately, as if every movement cost her something. I can't, she whispered. If I speak, the trap moves. And when it moves, it closes on you. Her words sank into me like stones dropped into deep water. They didn't make sense, not fully. And yet, I believed her. Something about the raw fear in her voice, the absolute conviction in her trembling hands, told me this wasn't just paranoia. This was survival, the silence that screamed. I tried everything. I begged, I pleaded, I raised my voice in frustration. Don't you understand? Your silence is killing me more than the truth ever could. She winced, as if my words struck her physically. Tears welled up in her eyes, but still she said nothing. Only one sentence. Not yet. Those two words became her shield. Not yet, not yet, not yet. She repeated them until they lost meaning, until they felt like a prayer she was chanting to herself. At night, I could hear her pacing the hallway, her bare feet brushing against the old wood. Sometimes she stopped outside my room, whispering prayers to the darkness. Sometimes she cried softly, so quietly she thought I wouldn't hear, but I always did, and in those moments, I realized her silence wasn't cowardice, it was a sacrifice. She was carrying something so heavy, so dangerous, that she would rather let me hate her for her refusal than let me suffer the consequences of the truth. But the more she refused, the more the silence screamed. Cracks in the fortress. One evening, I found her in the basement again, scrubbing that same rectangle on the floor with bleach. Her hands were red and raw, but she kept scrubbing. I asked her why. She didn't answer. Mom, I said, my voice breaking, please, you don't have to carry this alone. I'm not a child anymore. You can tell me. She froze, brush mid-scrub slowly. She turned her face toward me. Her eyes were filled with a pain I had never seen before, like someone torn between saving their child and telling them the truth that would break them. You think you're ready, she said softly, but you're not. I know, because I wasn't ready either. And when the truth came for me, it destroyed everything. I stepped closer, heart pounding. Then let me decide for myself. Her lips parted. For a moment, I thought she would finally do it, finally speak. But then she slammed her eyes shut, shook her head violently, and whispered, no, silence is the only protection left. The letter. The next morning, I went to check the mailbox. Inside was another plain white envelope, with no return address, just like the one she made me throw away before. I held it in my hand, heart racing. This time, I didn't throw it away. I slipped it into my pocket and took it upstairs. Alone in my room, I opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No words, no names, just a symbol, two intersecting circles with a line running straight through the middle. I stared at it for a long time. My pulse quickened. My hands shook. What was it? A warning? A threat? A signature? When I showed it to my mother, she went pale. The paper slipped from her fingers as if it burned. Where did you get this? She demanded. The mailbox, I said. Tell me what it means. But she didn't. She just pressed her hands to her face and whispered, it's too late. That was the moment I realized her silence was more dangerous than her words, because if she wouldn't tell me the truth, then I was forced to seek it myself. The curse of karma. That night, she finally gave me a glimpse. Just a glimpse. She sat on the couch, staring at the floor, her rosary clenched tight in her hands. Karma doesn't forget, she said. It follows like a shadow. You can run, you can hide, you can stay silent, but it will always find you. And when it does, it doesn't just punish the guilty. It punishes everyone they love. I asked her again, what did you do? Her eyes filled with tears. She looked at me, her child, the person she had sworn to protect, and shook her head. I can't, she whispered, because once I say it out loud, it won't just be my curse anymore. It will be yours. The breaking point, her refusal, ate away at me. Every day, every silence, every unanswered question, it was like a slow poison. I grew restless, anxious, suspicious of everyone around me. Neighbors, strangers on the street, even my own friends. Were they the ones watching? One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I cornered her in the hallway, blocking her path. Enough, I shouted, my voice trembling with rage and despair. Do you love me or not? Because if you do, you'll tell me the truth. You'll stop hiding. You'll stop treating me like a child. Her whole body shook. She pressed her back against the wall, clutching the rosary so tightly it cut into her hand. Finally, she screamed a raw, broken scream that shattered the silence of our house. Tears streamed down her face as she collapsed to the floor, whispering over and over, "They're watching, they're watching, they're watching." And then, in a voice so faint I almost missed it, she added, "And they will never stop." The refusal that was the last time I asked her directly, the last time I begged, demanded, pleaded, because in that moment I realized the truth. She would never tell me. Not because she didn't want to, but because she couldn't. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was her last weapon. And as much as it destroyed me, as much as it left me drowning in questions, I began to understand. Sometimes silence is the only way to keep the curse contained. But the more she refused to speak, the louder the questions screamed inside me. And deep down, I knew, if she wouldn't open the door to the truth, then I would have to find the key myself. Silence had become the soundtrack of our house. Not the peaceful kind of silence, the silence of birds nesting in the trees, or the silence of a library where the air smells of old paper. No, this was a hostile silence, a silence that pressed against the walls, that followed me into every room, that turned every word left unsaid into a weapon. I stopped asking my mother directly, but the questions didn't leave me. They grew louder in my head, pacing like restless animals in a cage. Every time I looked at her, I saw the burden she carried, the weight of whatever past had chained her to fear. And every time I looked in the mirror, I wondered how much of that burden was already mine. For days, we lived in this uneasy rhythm, her guarding her secrets, me circling them like a predator too afraid to strike. And then came the warning, the one that shattered even the illusion of safety we had tried so hard to build. The phone call. It happened on a Tuesday evening. The kind of evening when the world outside seems normal, kids playing in yards, neighbors mowing lawns, the smell of someone grilling drifting through the air. But inside our house, the tension was thick enough to choke on. My mother was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with mechanical precision, when the phone rang. Not my cell phone, not hers. The old landline on the wall, the one that almost never rang anymore. We froze. The sound was sharp, invasive. "Wrong. Don't answer it," she whispered. But it kept ringing, and with each shrill tone, I felt a magnetic pull. Something in me said I had to know. Against her protests, I picked up the receiver. At first, there was only static. Then, a low voice, distorted but clear enough to understand, said, "Tell her, it's not over." Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stood there, heart hammering in my chest, staring at the silent phone as if it might explain itself. Slowly, I turned toward my mother. She had dropped the knife. It lay on the counter, blade glinting, forgotten. Her face was white as bone, her eyes wide with terror. "What did they say?" she demanded, her voice breaking. "They said, it's not over." Her knees buckled. She clutched the counter to keep from collapsing. Then, in a trembling whisper, she said something that made my blood run cold. "Then, they've found us." The warning in the shadows. From that moment, everything changed. She doubled her precautions, checking the locks not just 3 times, but 10. She taped over every lens in the house, covered mirrors with sheets, unplugged every device. At night, she sat awake in the dark, staring out the window as though expecting someone or something to arrive at any moment. But it wasn't just her paranoia anymore. Strange things started happening. I'd walk into a room and swear I saw the curtain move, though no breeze had touched it. Once, I found muddy footprints outside the back door, prints too large to be hers, too fresh to be old. And then there was the car, a black sedan parked across the street. No one ever got out, no one ever got in. It just sat there, day after day, engine silent, windows too dark to see through. My mother pretended not to notice, but I caught her, glancing at it every time she passed the window. One night, I finally asked, "Mom, who are they? Why are they watching us?" She closed her eyes, shaking her head. "If I tell you, you'll see them too. And once you see them, they'll never leave you alone." Her words sent a shiver through me. And yet, wasn't I already seeing them? Wasn't I already marked? The note. A week later, another envelope arrived, plain white, no return address. This time, my mother wasn't fast enough to stop me from opening it. Inside was a single sentence, typed in bold letters: "She hasn't told you everything." No name, no signature, just those words. I felt my chest tighten, my vision blur with anger and fear. I shoved the paper toward her. "What does this mean? Who wrote this?" Her hands shook as she read it. Then she tore the letter into tiny pieces. and threw them into the sink, running water until the ink bled and disappeared. "It's a warning," she whispered. "A warning from who?" I pressed. Her eyes filled with tears. She looked at me, her child, the person she had sworn to protect, and her lips trembled. For a moment, I thought she would break her silence, but then she shook her head violently, almost as if scolding herself, and said, "No, the truth is poison, and once you drink it, you can't spit it out." The unexpected confession that night. I sat beside her on the couch, desperate, exhausted. The house was silent except for the tick of the old clock on the wall. I couldn't take it anymore. "Mom," I said softly, "you don't have to tell me everything. Just tell me one thing, one truth, please." She didn't look at me. She kept her eyes fixed on the dark window, her reflection staring back at her like a ghost. For a long time, I thought she would ignore me. But then, in a voice so faint I almost missed it, she said, "I made a mistake that cost lives. And now, karma doesn't just follow me, it follows you." My breath caught. "What mistake? What did you do?" Her lips pressed together. Her whole body shook. Then she whispered, "If I speak it, the walls will hear, and the walls always remember." That was all she gave me, just enough to deepen the mystery, to feed the fire of my desperation. The karma of silence days passed. Her silence became unbearable. And yet, her fear began to infect me. I started checking the locks myself, closing the curtains, watching the shadows at night. I began to believe that maybe she was right. Maybe speaking the truth would bring it to life. But then, something happened that shook me to my core. I was walking home one evening when a man brushed past me on the sidewalk. He didn't stop. He didn't look back. But as he passed, he whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "Ask her about the basement." I spun around, heart pounding, but the man was gone, swallowed by the crowd. When I told my mother, she broke down completely. She fell to her knees, clutching my hands with a grip so tight it hurt. Tears streamed down her face as she cried, They know you're asking. Stop, please, stop." Her panic was raw, desperate, almost feral. For the first time, I realized her silence wasn't just about protecting MIT, was about keeping us both alive. The warning becomes a curse that night. As she finally drifted into an uneasy sleep on the couch, I sat awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed every warning, every silence, every unanswered question. "They are watching you. It's not over. She hasn't told you everything. Ask her about the basement." The words circled in my head, a chain tightening around me. And then, I understood. The warning wasn't just about danger. It was about inevitability. No matter how much she refused to speak, no matter how many locks we installed or letters we burned, the truth was coming, slowly, silently, relentlessly, like karma itself. And when it arrived, it would not just take her, it would take me too. I thought the warnings would stop. I thought if I stayed quiet, if I obeyed her rules, if I let the questions rot inside me, the storm would pass. But storms don't pass when they live inside your own house. They grow, they feed on silence, and sooner or later, they explode. The car outside didn't move. The envelopes kept coming. The whispers followed me down the street. And my mother, my strong, unshakable mother, was dissolving into a shadow of herself. She barely slept, barely ate. She jumped at every sound, clutched the rosary until her hands bled, and still, she refused to speak the truth. Until the night everything broke. The breaking of the walls. It was past midnight when I heard it. 3 knocks on the back door. Slow, deliberate. My mother shot up from the couch before I could even move. Her face drained of all color. She pressed a finger to her lips and whispered, "Don't." But the knocks came again. 3. Measured, patient. She clutched my hand so tight it hurt, dragging me toward the hallway. "Upstairs. Now," she hissed. We climbed the stairs in silence, her breath shallow, her body trembling with urgency. In her room, she pulled me into the closet and shut the door. We crouched in the dark, listening. The knocks stopped. The house was still. Then came the sound of the back door creaking open. My mother buried her face in her hands, whispering prayers through clenched teeth. My heart thundered in my chest, each beat screaming louder than the last. I wanted to burst out, to fight, to see, but her grip held me prisoner. After what felt like an eternity, the silence returned. No footsteps, no voices, nothing. When we finally emerged, the back door was closed, but something lay on the kitchen table. A single sheet of paper. On it, written in bold letters, were the words, The basement is not empty. The secret below my legs nearly gave out. I turned to my mother, demanding an explanation, but she collapsed to the floor, sobbing, clutching the note to her chest. Please, she begged, don't ask. Don't go down there. Promise me. But promises don't hold when curiosity has already opened the door. The next day, when she finally dozed off from exhaustion, I crept downstairs. I stared at the rectangle of floor she had scrubbed so many times, the patch of concrete that looked newer, cleaner, different. My hands shook as I grabbed a hammer and chisel. Every strike echoed through the basement, a drumbeat of betrayal. The concrete cracked, dust filled the air, and then I found it, a small wooden box, sealed tight, buried beneath the floor. My chest heaved, my mind screamed. I pried it open. Inside were stacks of old photographs, newspaper clippings, and letters. Faces I didn't recognize stared back at me, headlines about disappearances, about crimes unsolved, about people who had simply vanished. And in every clipping, every letter, one word was underlined in red ink: the truth. My mother couldn't speak. My mother's scream shattered the air when she found me. She tore the box from my hands, clutching it like a wounded child. Her face twisted in anguish, in rage, in fear. You weren't supposed to see this, she cried. Then tell me, I shouted back, tears burning in my eyes. Tell me what this is. Tell me who they are. She collapsed against the wall, sliding to the floor, rocking back and forth as if the weight of her silence was crushing her. Finally, through ragged breaths, she whispered, they were my friends, my family, my choices, and I betrayed them. Her words shook me. Betrayed them how? Her eyes locked onto mine, hollow and haunted. I told the wrong truth to the wrong people, and because of me, they disappeared. Every one of them. I thought I could run. I thought silence would save you. But karma never loses its way, and now it's at our door. Her voice cracked into a sob. Do you understand? The more I speak, the more it spreads. The truth isn't just mine, it becomes yours. And when it becomes yours, it destroys you too. The darker mystery from that night on, I understood. My mother wasn't just keeping a secret. She was protecting me from inheriting a curse. But still, the questions burned inside me. Who were these people? Why did they vanish? Who were they watching us from the shadows? Every time I asked, she only shook her head. Every time I pushed, she only whispered, silence keeps us alive. And yet, I couldn't silence the truth inside me, because now, I wasn't just afraid of the watchers outside. I was afraid of my own blood, afraid of the possibility that my mother's sins were not just hers, but mine as well. The last warning. 2 nights later, another letter arrived. No envelope, just a folded page slid under the front door. It read, the past is yours now. Speak, and you will pay. I dropped the paper as if it were fire. My mother didn't even look at it. She just whispered, it has begun. Her panic was no longer just panic. It was prophecy. The curse of karma. Since then, I've felt it everywhere. The eyes that linger too long, the shadows that stretch too far, the silence that thickens whenever I whisper the word why. I don't know the full truth. I don't know the names, the stories, the weight of her betrayal, but I know this: karma doesn't vanish. It waits, it watches, it passes from mother to child, from silence to silence, until someone finally dares to speak. And when that happens, when the door finally opens, the darkness that has followed us will no longer hide in the basement. It will rise. And it will not stop until its debt is paid. And now, I need to ask you something. If you were in my place, if you discovered your mother had been hiding a past filled with betrayal, disappearances, and a curse that never lets go, would you want to know the truth, or would you choose the safety of silence? Tell me in the comments below. Share this video with someone who believes secrets always find their way back. And don't forget to follow, because this story is only just beginning.